Hello, student. I hope you are all doing great. So, after I explain the synopsis to you of the play and then I explain the prologue right now, I will go briefly, very briefly, and quickly through the act and scenes of the play. As you have already know that the beginning of the play, like the characters are engaging with each another, I explained almost everything in the synopsis, and it was very clear to you. Right now, we will go a little bit in details to explain to you how the characters engage with each other and to get to know each of the characters, let's say, side. So I will go over Act 1 and Scene 1 briefly and quickly, as I've already told you, and then we'll go to Act 2 as well in this PDF file. You cannot student copy and paste from this file because it's already there is a copyright for this file, so you cannot just copy things from it and then just paste it to some other place. So I highly recommend you, let's say, explain the things in the play using your own words. And if you have to go to this file, then you only have to go there just to remember the event in case you forget any of them. So let's come to Act 1, Scene 1. So in the beginning of the play, especially this comedy, Goldsmith establishes three important things. So in the beginning of the play, we have the characters, and then we have the location, and then we have the circumstances that led to the development of the plot. Okay, so let's come to those two characters who gonna enter at the beginning. So we have Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle, if you do remember those two names, and both of them are like he's the husband and she's the wife, and two, like both of them are having contrasting natures. And from the beginning, Oliver Goldsmith tried to show that to the audience. How is that? Let's see. Hardcastle is a really traditionalist. He loves old time, old manners, old books. So he's a tradition. Like he's so much more concerned about old books, old manners, old wine, everything that is old. Okay, and we know that Mr. Hardcastle has a daughter, and her name is Kate. Okay, by his previous marriage. Okay, um, whom he treats in a very kindly but firm manner. Okay, so his second wife, and her name is Dorothy Hardcastle, or sometimes we call it Mrs. Hardcastle. So, students, if you see Dorothy, don't get really disturbed because this is her first name. So, Mrs. Hardcastle is different from Mr. Hardcastle because uh, how is she different? Because she's more interested in London society. Okay, anything that is associated with high class people, and she's always expresses a longing for a trip into town because she doesn't really want to live in a countryside. She's more associated to high life people, and she's more interested in fashion. Okay, so do you see the contrast? So, student, if I ask you to analyze those two characters, Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle, this is from the beginning. We have to say that Mr. Hardcastle is more associated with the old stuff, and Mrs. Hardcastle is more associated with fashion and the new stuff. Um, to accommodate these, she tries to lose a few years from her age. She has a son by her first marriage, and the son is called Tony uh, Lumpkin. And she, by the end of the play, or let's say in the middle of the play, we know that she wanted Tony Lumpkin to marry Constance Neville, okay, because she wanted to control the jewels. So let's come here to the couple prepare for Tony Lumpkin. Who are the couple? Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle. So they are prepared for Tony Lumpkin's entry by discussing his characteristics. So students, so at the beginning we have Mr. Hardcastle and then we have Mrs. Hardcastle, and we saw the difference between both of those two characters. Right now we have Tony Lumpkin, and let's see his characteristics. Mrs. Hardcastle, in soft terms, speak of the invalid boy, while Hardcastle, Mr. Hardcastle, tried to speak really, truly, let's say, badly about Lumpkin, because Johnny Lumpkin has a lot of pranks, okay, pranks. So he's making jokes with people or prank, okay. So he's sometimes burning the footman's shoes, and sometimes frightening the maids, and sometimes he's worrying the kittens. So Mrs. Hardcastle is saving some tuition because she want to just let him go to kind of like a schooling, and to become kind of like a clergyman or a lawyer, while Mr. Hardcastle believes that he's only suitable for taverns, which means his only place is either an inn or any other place than the school. Tony Lumpkin lives up his name. He seems to be Self-willed House Claude. It seems to be very stupid to Mr. Hardcastle. So we see that Tony Lumpkin is the characters in the play, one of the characters in the play, and let's say the one who's gonna be making the whole prank, and she stoops to conquer. And we have seen his characteristics here. Let's say he's stupid. He's someone who's very silly. He's someone who's not taking everything seriously. So that's why we see Mr. Hardcastle as if he's not feeling comfortable with Donnie's existence at their home. What we have here, we have Kate then entered. Kate, Mr. Hardcastle's daughter. And she enters immediately after Lumpkin exists, and we compare the two characters as well. So we have Mr. Hardcastle and we have Mrs. Hardcastle. Okay, so Mr. Hardcastle has a daughter, her name is Kate, and Mrs. Hardcastle, from her previous marriage, she had Tony. So first of all, student, we have to compare Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle, and then let's compare Kate and Tony on the side. So we knew that Tony is someone who makes pranks with people, someone who's stupid, someone is not taking everything seriously, while Kate is, let's see, Kate is very polite in addressing both her father and stepmother. She's very obedient in following Hardcastle's plan to wear a plain housewife dress in the evening. Okay, so what's this, student? So since Mr. Hardcastle, her father, loves everything that is old, so there is an agreement between Kate and her father. In the morning, she will wear something that is very fashionable according to her stepmother and what she wants, and then in the evening, she will wear like a house wives, or let's say someone like a maid. Okay, this is a kind of like an agreement between the father and the daughter. She wears a fashionable silk dress in order to pay calls and receive visitors earlier every day, and she is interested when she hears that her father has invited Marlow, okay, a young man who hopes she will marry to stay for a while. So we have this character. We have Kate. She's very obedient. She's very polite, unlike Johnny, who's someone very, let's say, stupid. The final person to enter this, let's say, on the stage is Constance Neville, okay? And this is Mrs. Hardcastle's niece, okay? And she's very close a friend to Kate as well. And from Constance Neville, we learned that Marlow is a very respectful friend of Hastings, and Hastings is a young gentleman who admires her. Okay, so do you see that this is everything is very clear from the beginning? Like all the characters are showing up in the first scene, and all of them are there, and the audience has started to understand that there are two pairs of young people, Kate and Marlowe, Constance and Hastings. Okay, and then the audience is giving clues about the characteristics of Marlowe well in advance of his entry. So before Marlowe enters the stage, Constance Neville talked about him. She said that he's a very respectful person, he's very obedient, he's very whatever. So in advance of everything, so the audience started to make ideas about who's that character. So Hardcastle tells us that he is very bashful and reserved young man as well. Okay, and then we have a little bit here, a little bit information about. Okay, so he can give further information which Hardcastle does not know. When Marlowe mixes with girl of low class, he becomes a very different person. So this information is quite clear from the beginning of the play. So we have a commentary here, student. It's kind of like something very simple to make you understand the play. So the scene takes place in an old-fashioned house. This is the place, and this is one of Hardcastle's rather than his wife's choosing. Okay. We see that Mrs. Hardcastle at the beginning of the play, she truly complains the building of the house, because she said that the building is truly resembles an inn, and this is why Marlowe and Hastings later on in the play mistaking the place for an inn. And then there were a couple of improvements in the play, and all of these, the natures of the characters are shown up from the beginning of the play. Okay, so let's continue with the surroundings. So the surrounding countryside, we hear nothing other than the neighboring inhabitants, and then we also knew that Tony Limpkin's low class people. If you student know that low class people sometimes are giving rustic names, okay, too long, sometimes too small, sometimes according to their occupation. So we will not go through these things a lot, but the most important thing is at the beginning, Oliver Goldsmith introduces nothing that is not used later in the development of the play. So what it means that he gives everything at the beginning to, let's say, almost all the information of the whole play. Let's say that the audience right now is prepared for Mrs. Hardcastle description for Marlowe and Hastings to mistaking the house for an inn, because we from the first beginning we knew that Mrs. Hardcastle is complaining from the design of the house that resembles an inn, and we knew that Tony is someone who make pranks with people, so it is obvious that the student will see another prank from Tony. And they're also waiting for Kate to be taken for a barmaid. Also, students, this is very important, the audience right now knew about Kate's plan, because in the beginning, in the morning, she will wear a very fashionable dress, and in the evening, will wear as a barmaid. Okay, and we're introduced also to the theme of wealth, because we see that the some of them are very high class people, some of them are low class people. And then Tony Limpkin has inherited an annuity from his father, and Constance Neville owns a considerable amount of jewelry. We knew that Constance Neville has a jewelry, and her aunt wanted to manage this jewelry. So the recovery of these jewels will add to the nature of the plot later in the play. Even Tony himself. Fleeting appearance helps to establish that he has little respect for his doting mother and will actively side against her when the occasion demands. So, do you see the students from the beginning of the play? Everything is put in the right direction for the audience to understand what will happen in the play. This is all when it comes to Act 1, Scene 1. So students, right now we move to Act 1, Scene 2, and we see in this act Tony Limpkin is sitting in the Three Pigeons, the inn that I already explained to you at the beginning and the synopsis. And now he's sitting with his fellow people from the low class, and he is shouting, singing, and doing, a couple of stuff. And then assuming there is no need to read these things, okay? Leave it so far. And then let's just start from the later on information. Okay, so we have the landlord of the inn, okay? And the landlord of the inn announces that both of Marlow and Hastings, two people, like at the door of the inn, and they have already lost their way. And Lumpkin already knew, and he was waiting for two men to come to his house, and now he really had a plan to avenge his stepfather's let's say behaviors towards him. His father's, what he means, Mr. Hardcastle, because he wanted to avenge him, because Mr. Hardcastle, it really doesn't like his behavior, Tony's behavior. So for this reason, Limpkin is trying to do something that might hurt Mr. Hardcastle, a prank, another prank. Okay? Then he said he will, let's say, direct the travelers to Hardcastle's house, pretending it is an inn, and called the Buck's Head. Okay? And here we start with the, let's say, wrong information, or let's say the mistakes that's why we said the mistakes of a night this is the mistake of a night. So this mistake is right now happening. So let's start with the plot. Okay. So we see here that in the previous scene, the audience already prepared for both of like Marlow and Hastings to enter the scene, okay, and to mistake or let's say lose their way and mistake the house for an inn. So Lumpkin's spirit of fantasy began to work at once, and Tony Limpkin, described Mr. Hardcastle and Kate in an unattractive light, but to present himself as a agreeable youth. So more fantastic is the description of their surroundings. So both of like the landlord of this inn, the Three Pigeons, and Tony Limpkin, they started to describe the countryside for both of Hastings and Marlow. They said that, by the way, student, this is a truly fabricated description, because they want them to believe that the Buck's Head or Mr. Hardcastle's house is the good way to go there, because they told them that the area and the countryside is boggy road, hills, and there are a couple of dangerous things that's happening around. So they asked them to go to the Buck's Head or to the inn or Mrs. Hardcastle's house, because this is a truly an easy journey to them, and it's a really good place. And also Lumpkins told them that Mr. Hardcastle, he's an innkeeper. So we have a lot of mistaken identity in here. And then the travelers try to make their way out through Tony Limpkin's description. So do you see, this is student, this is a little bit commentary on the play. So in this scene, Goldsmith lays the basis for the plot. So from here, he started to lay the basis for the plot. So this is the mistake of the night. Here we go with the mistake of the night that begins with Marlow and Hastings assuming that Hardcastle's house is the Buck's Head or the inn. Okay? And he's building on the impression he carefully contrived earlier of the rambling old-fashioned mansion. Okay. Okay, students, so there is no need to go in details with all this stuff right now. Okay, so the most important thing is that Marlow and Hastings lost their way and they are on um, their way to Mr. Hardcastle's house, though they don't, they, though they, s- you know, though they knew that this is an inn, not Mr. Hardcastle's house. So let's come to Act 2 and then we will go quickly also and briefly to the description in Act 2. Okay, so in this part in Act 2, we knew that Mr. Hardcastle's house. Okay, so the scene returns to Mr. Hardcastle's house, and the audience sees Hardcastle attempting to drill servants in the method of waiting at table in preparation for the arrival of Hastings and Marlow. So he was waiting for Hastings and Marlow. He's tried to give kind of like instructions for the servants to behave in a really good way. So, as it says here, the low life is different from the high class. So, do you see, students, the gap? So, the servants are acting in a truly different way, and then Mr. Hardcastle is telling them to behave in a different way. And we see here that the scene is interrupted by the arrival of Hastings and Marlowe. So both of them came to Mr. Hardcastle's house, and then they both admire the house because they both of them believe that this is truly an inn, not a house. Okay. Uh, let's see here. In conversation with Hastings, we learned that Marlowe has spent much of his life residing either at colleges or at inns. And on the rare occasions he has met a young lady of his own class, she has petrified him. Marlowe claims that he is visiting Hardcastle in order to let Hastings meet Constance Neville. So Hardcastle welcomed the visitors, and he showed them their way to the place to get sleep. And he told them that this is a Liberty House, Hall, and he is immediately mistaken for the innkeeper. So Marlowe knew that Mr. Hardcastle is an innkeeper because Tony told him this. Okay, and we see here. And then Hastings started to talk about like the things that they need. They need um, to get to change their traveling clothes, and they need some also food for the to let's see where the food is. Okay, this is the quality of a quantity of a proposed meal, and Marlowe delegate the choice of a food to Hardcastle. So they also asking for a food. Student, do you see the difference? Like if you go as a visitor to some other place and you just get mistaken of the whole thing in this place, and you believe that this is a restaurant or this is an inn, they are acting in a really strange way. Okay, so Constance Neville discovered that Hastings is realizing that he was mistaking for Hardcastle's house for an inn. So Constance Neville told Hastings that this is not an inn actually, this is Mr. Hardcastle's house. And they were truly afraid to tell Marlowe because they wanted to run away, for their elopement, as I already explained to you at the beginning of the play. They wanted to travel to France and get married there. Okay, so they wanted to let Marlowe alone in the deception that he's staying in an inn. And because if they told Marlowe, then Marlowe would leave the place and they will not be able, Constance Neville and Hastings to run away. So, student, when Marlowe returns from the bedroom, Hastings told him that Constance and Kate have arrived, and he pretends that they need to renew their horses at the inn. So, Marlowe, although he was very anxious to leave, because he doesn't really want to meet Kate, because as we already know that he's feeling very shy with women presence. So he met Kate, and Marlowe and Kate truly have a really humorous conversation. And then after that, after they left, or after Kate is left, she said that, or she felt like Marlowe is a man of sentiment. He's a serious, he's an honorable and highly sensitive young man. This is Kate's first impression on Marlowe. And he has a good sense, but then so buried in his fears that is fatigues one more than ignorance. She determines to discover how can she teach him a little confidence. Do you see this? She determines to discover how she can teach him a little confidence. So she's also having a plan in her mind, and the plan is to get addressed in a barmaid thing. So we have the fashions of London are the topics that Mrs. Hardcastle and Hastings pursue as they re-enter the room. So Mrs. Hardcastle, she's very dreaming of fashionable thing, and she kept saying that to Mr. Hardcastle. And we have here that Hastings flatters Mrs. Hardcastle on her hairstyle, her dress, and her youthful appearance. So, we have here Tony came to the house, and he met with Hastings also, and then um, Tony truly attacks Constance Neville, and he started to talk bad about her, and he doesn't want to marry her. But Hastings said, "How about like to offer you to take Constance off your hands, and give us some help in this concern." And Tony promised to help Hastings, okay, and to provide them with horses, and also to get a little bit from the Constance fortune from his mother. So, in this point, this is the first point in the play in which Lumpkin's character has been presented as a friendly, agreeable light, and Hastings rightly draws the attention of the audience to his virtues. So, a student, in this act, the deception of Tony Limpkin is try to make it work, okay? For the prank that he did, Hastings is try to mistaking the house, and Marlowe as well. So, students, we see here the in this let's say act, we see a lot of mistaking things, ironic things, let's say. And the mistaking identity that happens allows a number of ironic remarks to be made. So the most obvious of which is Marlowe's and Hastings, and how both of them mistaking the house for an inn. And we say that we see that let's say here the number of people who are fooled by Lumpkin's trick. So the number of those who got it tricked are diminishing, which means it's getting less, because the both of Hastings and Constance discovered that it was a prank, and they discovered that it was a mistake, but Marlowe is not. Leaving Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle and Marlowe with the crossed wires. So, in the next, let's say, scene, the plot is advanced by the plan that Hastings make to elope with Constance. It's very simple, student. So now the thing has changed. So both of like Hastings and Constance gonna loop, or let's say runaway in the next scene, and all this information are given to the audience by the end of Act 2. This is a hint of a development which will come in Act 3. Okay, and then Kate's determination to help Marlow gain enough confidence to make a proposal to her. So student try to leave this part on page 25. Try to leave it. And this is all what is important in Act 1 and in Act 2. I hope I make it clear for you. Though I went briefly and quickly through the events. I went, quickly and briefly because I thought that the synopsis that I gave you is very, let's say, brief. Let's say, information about the whole play. So in the next video, I will go over Act 3 and Act 4, and then we'll go over the themes and literary devices that is used in our play She Stoops to Conquer. Thank you for listening.